Hey guys, it's Julia. Welcome back to my channel. So today is the first video that I'm filming in 2019. I actually haven't sat down and filmed in like 2 weeks, so it's my first time filming in a long time. I'm a little bit nervous. I feel like I've just gone to the beginning of my YouTube cycle, but first and foremost, I want to thank you guys for helping me reach 10,000 subscribers. It's not a huge number by any means, but it means the whole world to me. This is just the beginning. I'm so excited to see what this year has in store for us, and thank you guys so much.
What if I'm the monster?
I'm so grateful for you guys. So thank you guys so much. That was the most amazing present on January 2nd as a New Year's thing. Today I'm going to be continuing probably my favorite series that I introduced in 2018, which is the color series. And we are doing greens today. This was probably the most requested one on both comment sections on my yellow and red video. Everyone was saying, do greens, do teals. Surprisingly, I don't have a ton, so I decided to put together greens and teals into one big video, so it was like enough things to show you guys. But obviously I'm wearing a very green look today, but basically I'm just going to go through all my favorite green eyeshadows in my collection. Green is a particularly hard color to formulate as well. They're normally just really patchy or just not pigmented at all, so these are some of my favorite and least favorite green shadows. I hope you guys enjoy this one. Thank you guys so much for 10K, and let's get this bread.
No, God! No, God, please, no! 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 No!
So I'm going to start off with like the true greens. These are basically just like the primary colors, either bright or just like regular green, what you'd see in a rainbow, basically. I don't know, I'm really bad at describing colors. New year, same really bad color descriptions. I'm going to start off with one of the only like green palettes that I have. It's like a fully green palette, and this is what I'm wearing on my eyes right now. This is the Huda Beauty Emerald Obsessions palette. These Obsessions palettes are really interesting to me because they're definitely not the same formula as the big Huda Beauty palettes. I think the new Nude palette and the Desert Dust palette are two of my favorite formulas. I think they're just beautiful. They blend really easily, super pigmented, and you don't really have to work very hard to get them to look amazing on the eyes. Whereas these, they're also pretty dry, but I feel like these are a little bit, I don't know, you have to work with them a bit more, and I was like, why are they a different formula? Somebody actually did inform me that these are made in China, whereas the big palettes are made in Italy, so that's a huge difference in the formulation of the palettes. I do think that they are a different formula, and these are definitely less amazing quality than the big palettes, which is something to take into account. I was able to create this eye look relatively easily. The shadows in here did take a little bit of building, which is typical of like any colorful formula, but there's a lot of other formulas I have where it's just like crazy pigmentation, and this is not that. Green mattes in here, especially this one right here, I feel like they take a bit of building up. There are only 3 mattes in here. There's an olive green, a kind of like true Kelly green, and then a mint green. This mint green is something I don't have in my collection like at all. It's not the most pigmented, but it can be really pretty on the lid if you like pack it on crazy. And then the shimmers in here are amazing. I think her formula for shimmers is really good across the board, and they're really pretty, very foiled, and they don't take a lot of building on the eyes. My main gripe with this one is I want there to be like one more matte in here, preferably this shade here, this like dark emerald green. I would want that to be a matte, so I have something to kind of deepen up the crease, because like the darkest green shade in here is this, and that's not that dark. That being said though, these are pretty nice. You do have to build them up, but I feel like they don't get really patchy or blotchy or anything. But yeah, they're pretty green shadows, and just overall the way this palette is laid out really inspires me. So you're getting a mirror in here as well. It's very small and good and compact for travel, and overall I think it's a nice small green palette. If greens that you have to kind of like work with and build up a little bit more aren't your style, this is your style. Like, I don't have to rehash my love for the James Charles Morphe palette, but I really was impressed by the greens in here. Granted, there are only like 2 green matte shades. This one's called Social Blade, and this is called Daddy. And I already spent an entire video just roasting the shade names he picked out, so let's not do that again. Social Blade shade, literally only 1 application, and it shows up the color in the pan on the eyes. Pretty much the opposite of what I talked about with the Huda palette. These ones you barely need to build up to get that full pigmentation, and these do not go patchy on me. They are, I think, pressed pigments, so you do need to be a little bit more careful with them. But I haven't noticed any staining with these ones, and these are definitely the 2 favorite greens I have in my collection. So overall, if you're wanting some good colorful shadows, this is a really great option. By the way, within this color series, as we go on, you're probably going to see the same palettes. So I'm hoping it doesn't get too repetitive, but just keep in mind I am talking about like different shades and focusing in on different colors within the palettes. So while you might see the James Charles palette in probably like every color video, I will be focusing on different shades, so I'm trying to like talk about different things. I have a true green shade I don't super love, and it's from e.l.f. This is the Matte for Matte Jewel Pop palette, and I've just been generally pretty impressed with how they formulate the colorful shadows that they have. But this green...
Somebody lied to her several times and told her that she was fly, hot, and sexy and beautiful, and she's nothing like that. She's nothing of the sort.
Didn't really do that much for me. Kind of like the Huda one, it did require a lot of building up to get to like a nice amount of color pigmentation, but it just went patchy, and when you blended it out, it just didn't really go. It didn't look nice. It kind of muddied up and didn't look pretty on the eyes. Because I really do like the rest of the palette, just that shade did not really do it for me. The Joy Lorraine Cosmetics Paradise palette, which I've talked about a couple times in the color series, are two really pretty like green matte shades in here. This is your typical just like standard Kelly green. Again, the formula in this palette is insane. It's really, really buttery. I think it's kind of similar to Juvia's Place. So I don't think Juvia's Place has any matte green shades that I've tried out. Yeah, this is really beautiful, but the one I wanted to talk about was this kind of like bright acid berry lime green shade down here. Kind of looks very similar to the new Sugar Pill shadow that just came out, but it's a very bright, just kind of lime green shade. I don't have anything like this in my collection, and that's why I like this really colorful palette. Not only is it just your standard rainbow palette, but I feel like there's a lot of shades in here that you wouldn't really see in other colorful palettes. So these are some of my other favorite green matte shades, and a good alternative to the James Charles palette if you're not wanting to get that one. A green matte that I really used to love, but now I'm kind of just like, is for my Sugar Pill palette, which is, I didn't think I would ever mention this in the color series in the worst of side, but there's a green in here. I believe this is called Midori. I really, really liked this for a while, but it never looked quite right on my eyes. It was always that nice pigmentation, always showed up really bright on the eyes, but I didn't know just what it was until I looked closer and I realized there's tiny, tiny amounts of shimmer in here.
Well, just as I thought. Trash.
And I get why makeup companies put shimmers on their matte sometimes. It's to make them more just like kind of buttery and blend better. But there's a way you can do that to where you're not able to see it. But this, I feel like you can really see the micro shimmer in your eyes, and it's just not that nice looking. I felt like this one emphasized a lot of the texture I had on my lids. This I felt like looked good on me when my lids were perfect, which they never really are. I do really love Sugar Pill's colorful formula. I feel like they're very pigmented, they build really well, and just with a brush on the eyes, so pretty. But yeah, this green here is not my big favorite. So if you were planning on getting some Sugar Pill shadows and you were looking at this green, I would say skip it just because it does have a tiny bit of shimmer in there. If you're okay with that, go ahead and get it, but this is not my favorite green matte. Then finally, the last thing in the true greens category I want to mention is the Take Me Back to Brazil palette by BH. You've seen this one already, but I did want to mention some of the greens in here because again, kind of like the Joy Lorraine palette, I feel like these greens are really unique that you wouldn't necessarily see in any other rainbow palette. I don't really have any like lime greens like this in my collection. Granted, these two shades do look pretty much the same on the eyes. That's a problem I find with a lot of this palette. Like, you do get two hot pink shades, but they look exactly the same. So that's kind of a thing I've found with this one. For the price, for $18, I think the pigmentation of these ones is insane. You're getting 4 like matte green shades in here. This is kind of like a yellow green, I guess. And then a couple shimmers. I don't really love the shimmers, but the mattes in here are awesome. So these are some really, really good, affordable, like colorful green shades. Not as good as the James Charles palette, but still very good. I had a few requests to make Teal its own like episode of the color series, but I looked through my collection. I literally only found 2 palettes with teal shades I want to recommend. So I figured I would just put it in with the green shadows just because this one is a little bit smaller than the blues. So you're gonna get teals and greens in here, and teal is what I want to do next. So first, I know this is not going to be for everybody, but Subculture has some of my favorite teals and greens in here, and I think in terms of pigmentation, these are the most insanely beautiful. Emerald or teal green shades, it's really, really hard to find ones that build up and be that nice dark color. I feel like sometimes I have to layer a black on top of it just to get that extra intensity, whereas these ones, yeah, they don't need any help. Axis is like a true beautiful teal shade, whereas Untamed is a bit more on the emerald green side. Again, with Subculture, especially with the darker shades, it can be a little bit harder to blend out if you go in with a little bit too much product when you first start off. So I would say go in with just a very light touch, put them on, and then you can layer them on as you go. There's also a shade in here called Destiny. It's one of the few like olive greens I have that doesn't turn brown on the eyes, which is really, really nice. I'll talk about some other olive greens later on in the video, but this is one of my favorites as well. And then Electric, such a beautiful, insane lid shade. I just love the greens in here. That's why the green eyeshadow look I have in my profile picture on YouTube and Instagram is with this palette. So I used all 4 of the green shades in that look, and I love this so, so much. So definitely I would say get this while you still can. They are discontinuing Subculture, which breaks my heart, but I get that not everybody loved this one. I get that it's harder to work with. So of course I want to recommend this one in the good greens category because it genuinely has some of my favorite green shades, and I would be lying if I didn't recommend this one, but I do have an alternative if you're wanting a better, like more workable formula, which is the Kathleen Light's Dream Street palette from Colourpop. This has some beautiful teal shades in here. The shade I want to mention is Water Bearer. I genuinely, when I got this palette, I was not expecting this dark shade here to be good. Up until I got this palette, I hadn't tried a dark shade like this from Colourpop at all. Like, I didn't have any of their darker shades in my collection, either singles or in a palette, and it blew me away. This is one of the easiest to blend and most pigmented and most affordable teal shades I've had. Seeing the swatch, this one packs a ton of pigment, so it can be a little bit intimidating to work with on the first try, but I felt like no matter how much I used of this one, it didn't get patchy on me, which I really appreciated. And then there's a matching kind of like teal shimmer shade up here called Mermaid Boy, I think? I don't know, Colourpop palettes are really hard to read sometimes, but I'm pretty sure this is Mermaid Boy. Just having these two like color coordinated shades, I feel like makes a really nice monochromatic look on the eyes, and I don't know, this whole color story just makes a lot of sense to me. So I really love this one a lot, and I think if you're wanting some really, really good teal shades, this is definitely the way to go. It's $16 and probably my second favorite palette that Colourpop has ever done. Next category I want to get into is the deep emerald greens. So this is probably my favorite category of greens, just because I love those deeper, like vampy forest green shades kind of. So the first one I want to mention is probably my favorite one. It's from the Jaclyn Hill Morphe palette, the original one, and I gotta say the last two rows of the Jaclyn Hill Morphe palette are my favorite. But the shade down here, Enchanted. So pretty. Again, this is a shade I wasn't really expecting the most from, just because I tried like green matte shades from Morphe before this one, and I just wasn't that impressed. But this is so beautiful, and I feel like it's pretty beginner friendly as well as a green shade. I feel like it obviously does have a lot of pigmentation to it, but it does blend really easily, and I love this one for just using with any other green look. I love it to deepen up the outer corner and just add a little bit of grunginess and depth to the look, I guess. The shade right next to it is beautiful as well. This is called Diva. It's just a really fun, like, jade. One of the more unique shades in my collection as well, and this and the e.l.f. Matte for Matte 2 palette were the two things I took traveling with me in terms of eyeshadow for Hawaii. The only palettes I used for 2 weeks, and I love this one. I could get a different look every single time I use this one, so really, really enjoy this palette. And then I did want to mention the Dark Magic palette from the Vault collection with Jaclyn Hill, because I felt like it was an interesting choice of a palette, just because I felt like the last row of the Jaclyn Hill palette, the original one that I just showed you guys, looks pretty similar to the color scheme in here. So I was disappointed with the Vault collection overall, just because I felt like the shades in the Vault collection were very repetitive with what she'd already released. But if you're not wanting to get the entire Jaclyn Hill palette just for that one green shade, you could totally get the Vault collection Dark Magic palette just to get the shade Inside Job. It's very similar to Enchanted in my opinion, that same like dark green forest shade. You also get a coordinating shimmer shade called Trickery. This one does show up a little bit lighter on the eyes than it does in the pan, so that's just something to keep in mind, but still really pretty and coordinates very well with this one. And then there's also an olive green shade in here called Potion. This was the olive green in the Vault collection that I actually really liked. I'll mention the other one later in the worst of category. But I feel like Morphe does a really good job with making the color olive green. Usually the olives that they make, they blend out to be green on the eyes. They don't turn into browns or kind of muddy shades. So that's something I really appreciate in a good olive green. And just overall, if you're wanting some 3 really, really good green shades, this palette is awesome. And then a dark forest green matte shade that I wouldn't necessarily recommend is from the A2O Labs Wildflower palette. Overall, I really like these palettes a lot. I think they have like 4 of these eyeshadow kits on their website. They're $10 each. You're getting this like magnetic palette thing, and then you're getting a mirror, and basically just a little Z palette type of thing where you put in your shadows. So obviously I took mine apart. This is not how the actual Wildflower palette comes, but I took it apart and I put in some shades that I want to have in there. In the Wildflower palette, you're getting 2 green shades. One of them is a matte. This shade is called Mossy. It's muddy. It's definitely not the worst green matte shade I've ever tried out, and for $1, I think it's pretty good actually. So I'm not saying it's a bad green eyeshadow, I'm just saying that it wasn't my favorite, especially with the other 2 I just mentioned. I definitely felt like this one was a lot lighter in pigmentation, so I had to build this one up to get to the full color. And when I did that, it was harder to blend it out and make it look nice and seamless and non-patchy on the eyes. So when I did do an eye look with this one, I ended up covering it up with the shimmer shade in here. Now, if we're talking good green shades in this palette, the shimmer shade is so freaking pretty. It's kind of like a dark green black duochrome shift, so it's very deep on the eyes, very intense, and super, super foiled. So I think the shimmers in these palettes they make it totally worth it. But yeah, this green matte shade in here, I think it's not terrible. The fact that it is a single makes it stand alone, and as a standalone shadow, it's not the best. As I mentioned, in the Vault collection, there is also the Armed and Gorgeous palette, which has another olive green in here, but for some reason, the other olive green was really good, and this one sucks. I don't know where they went wrong. It's literally the same exact color, like in terms of how it blends out and looks on the eyes. It still shows up as that nice green shade, and when you blend it, it doesn't turn like brown or anything, but it does turn patchy, which is not my favorite. If you're looking for a good olive green shade, go for the Dark Magic palette over this one. They're both the same price, and that one has better green shades overall. This one is just not my fave. Overall, I really do like this palette. The yellows in here are beautiful and the shimmers are awesome. This shade though was probably my least favorite in the entire Vault collection, and one of the only shades that I felt like everyone's reviews were coming true for me. My favorite olive greens would have to be from the Morphe 39A palette.
I love Morphe. Use code, just kidding, you thought, I don't have a code.
The layout of this palette is overall the same as the James Charles palette, but I feel like the color scheme is a lot more of a grungy, deepened take on colorful shades, whereas James is a lot more bright and rainbow. The green quadrant down here I wanted to talk about because, again, it seems like you can't really get more than 3 green shades in the Morphe palette. These 2 olive green shades, so good. These are the best olive green shades I've tried out. Like I said, Morphe does really good olive green matte shades in terms of like how they make the color itself. These stay green on the eyes. They really pack that nice green punch, so it never ever looks like muddy. These stay the color in the pan on the eyes, which I think is really hard to find. They do look a little bit more similar. This one is a little bit brighter than this one, but they do look similar on the eyes, so I'm not sure you needed 2 of them. But overall, I really love this colorful palette, and I think these green shades down here are bomb. And the other 2 olive greens that I want to mention are actually from palettes that are literally some of my favorites in my collection. So don't think that I'm bashing on the entire palette itself, just the one green shade in each one. So Colourpop Good Sport palette.
Tears are just pain leaving the body. That's not true though.
My favorite Colourpop palette ever. I love the green shade in here called Ebb. It's a beautiful like lime green shimmer shade. Very unique. I don't have anything like that in my collection. But Trophies, I was really excited about because it looked to be a nice like deeper grungy toned olive shade, but when I got this one I was like, that doesn't look green at all. It looked kind of grayish with a tiny hint of green and a tiny hint of brown, and I was like, I could really envision how this one's gonna look on the eyes, but I really didn't want to admit it. This one, while it doesn't turn patchy on me, it does turn brown and kind of muddy and just doesn't look like a nice green color. Like, I want that grunginess out of an olive green, but I still want it to be green, if that makes sense. It probably doesn't. I felt like having either like true olive green or true forest green in here would really tie the entire color scheme together, but this kind of grayish, greenish, brownish shade, I don't know, it just doesn't really vibe with me. And then this one actually made it into my 2018 favorites, but the Ace Beauté Classical Paradise palette has a green in here called Golden Apple. This I felt like was gonna show up as a nice kind of like yellowish green, but it really just kind of looked like a pukey brown. I don't know, the entire like yellow green hue of this one got really lost on the eyes, especially as I blended it out. It just turned into this muddy, yeah, just kind of looked like baby shit. But for what I was going for, this just wasn't my favorite. So I do have a Get Ready With Me using the green shade in here and on the Colourpop palette on my eyes, and it just, the overall look turned out okay, just didn't look as green as I wanted it to be, which was disappointing. So last, I didn't really have a category for these ones, so I figured I'd just throw them in at the end, but the Pat McGrath Mothership 2 palette, which is my baby. The green duochrome shade in here, again, it's kind of like a green black duochrome shift. I actually use this in a Get Ready With Me so you can see how it performs in real time, but it's insanity. Like, I've always watched Pat McGrath's tutorials on her Instagram and I've been like, that doesn't actually like happen, right? It does. These are probably the best shimmer shades ever. This is expensive, but I think the effect that it gives is very unique and not really replicable in other palettes. And then I also have this palette from Il Makiage called the Color Boss Pro palette in Not Afraid. These types of palettes are kind of geared towards like pro makeup artists. This one has a nice green color scheme. There's 3 like kind of teal greenish shades. This is a beautiful like olive green shimmer. These are kind of like a cream powder texture, so they go on like a powder does, but they have the texture and softness of a cream, so they're very pigmented and very emollient, I guess, and kind of wet looking on the eyes, which is something that's very hard to find in a powder shadow like this. So while I don't love a ton of things from Il Makiage, this is probably the best thing that I've tried from them. All right guys, that is it for the best green shades. I hope you guys enjoyed this one. If you did, please give it a thumbs up. Please let me know in the comments down below what you'd like to see next in the color series, because I have a ton of ideas. I'm pretty sure I'm gonna do purple purple next, maybe blue. But yeah, let me know what else you guys want to see. Let me know if you have any ideas for this series because I really love this one. Make sure you are part of the 10,000 and growing subscribers on this channel, so click that red button down below. Also, make sure you're following me on Instagram because we are at like 4.2 now. Makeup looks like this one, posted pretty much every single day. So if you made it to the very end of this video, I love you guys so much. Thank you so much for watching the first video of 2019, and if you made it to the very end, I love you. Bye.